Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Right Off Track podcast, where we venture into the extraordinary journeys of individuals who have fearlessly embraced unconventional paths to success. Join us as we dive deep into the inspiring stories of our guests, uncovering the pivotal moments and decisions that have shaped their remarkable lives. Today, I am so thrilled to introduce an exceptional guest, Nicole Faith. Nicole is not only a social media maven and savvy entrepreneur, but also the heart, soul, and co-creator behind the recently launched program, Creative Collectives, CC. This ultimate course and community are designed to help you transcend to the next level in all aspects of life, business, and personal growth. With a perfect blend of self-development and entrepreneurship, CC empowers individuals like you to unlock your true potential and achieve greater heights. One thing that sets Nicole apart is the authenticity, big heart, and approachability she brings into her work. Her expertise in social media is unparalleled, as evidenced by her impressive track record of building thriving online presences for top entrepreneurs, therapists, coaches, speakers, nutritionists, CEOs, publishers, authors, and many others, transforming their social platforms from a few hundred or thousand followers to a staggering 2 million or more. But Nicole doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. Personally, she has successfully applied her know-how to amass a social media following of over 250,000 across all platforms, with content reaching an astounding 40+ million views. So get ready to be inspired as we delve into Nicole Faith's remarkable journey and learn from her experiences in entrepreneurship, social media mastery, and self-development. We're excited to have her share the journey behind her success and introduce you to the transformative power of Creative Collective. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a creative soul, or someone looking to take your personal growth to new heights, you're in for a treat. Stay tuned for a captivating conversation. Welcome, Nicole.
Hello. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I loved that introduction. I'm honored.
I'm honored too, friend. So I have to give a shout out to your mom, Judy, who was on the podcast earlier, and she's such an amazing blessing into my life. Did you tell you how we met?
Yes, through Gary Vee's post, right?
Yes. Yeah. She's like, Anya, have you thought about writing a book? I was like, oh, little do you know.
Oh my God. I love it.
And then she's like, my daughter's doing a little bit of marketing. You should reach out. She's fantastic. I'm like, okay. And then I talked to you and you were just genuine, sweet, amazing. And then I was like, okay, let's connect on Instagram. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm friends with a famous person.
No, oh my gosh. But thank you. I appreciate it.
But I knew this was going to be lots of fun. But just to get people started who don't know you, could you give us a little bit about your background, like where you are now, but also a little bit of the background, how you got to where you are, and like what inspired this passion for marketing, for social media, for helping people? Just give us a little bit of a context.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'll try and make this as short and sweet as possible,
or don't make it long. Make it long as in detail.
Yes. Well, even as far as my mom goes too, I kind of grew up with two entrepreneurs. Both my parents are entrepreneurs, so I was obviously on that roller coaster of highs and lows, and so I kind of learned along the way. I always kind of thought, okay, I'm supposed to be doing something entrepreneurial, even though there was part of me that really was yearning for stability. And I'll talk about that in a second. Even when I did move into corporate, I kind of knew okay, my spirit isn't being led here. And so I walked through my own trials and tribulations. Obviously, my mom wrote that book about losing our money, 95 million to food stamps. And then basically I just kind of grew into my life, had my own trials, went through a lot of my own stuff, dated some really bad people. And I just found myself basically at the last semester of college thinking, okay, I feel lost. I don't know who I am, what I'm doing, but I knew I wanted to get into the rooms with the right people. And so I actually forced myself into Ed Milet's inbox. And so Ed Milet is top 50 under 50, but yeah, he's amazing.
Power One More.
Yes. Power One More. He's one of the, top business experts, peak performance experts in the world. Just amazing. And he was somebody that was in my ear a lot through his podcasts in college. And so I knew, okay, I want to work for this guy. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to do my best to get in there. And so I finally was offered the lowest level position, started working on his media team, kind of worked my way up. And eventually he started to notice me, connect with me. And then he ended up becoming one of these mentors in my life. I learned so much. I was able to watch literally one of the top entrepreneurs in the world. How do they schedule their life? How do they show up for people? How do they keep going when they're struggling? How do they delegate? How do they lead? And it was fascinating to me. And it just kind of continued to create this spirit of entrepreneurship and helping people in my life. And he was able to coach me too. And I had actually had a coach starting at 14 years old. I tried out therapy, but I started coaching early. And so that she really had a huge impact in my life. But anyway, so I'm working on Ed Milet's media team. 2020 happens. I start kind of getting close into this. I want to work corporate, see how far I can take it, see everything that I've learned and see, can I scale myself? Can I take what I've learned and put it into a business and see if I'm actually what I think I might be. And so I went into corporate, ended up scaling probably in 6 months, became a director of marketing for a large logistics company. And during that time, I knew that it wasn't, I mean, it was logistics. So come on. I mean, it can only be so fun, but I knew that I wanted more. And so I'd always knew that I was going to help people. I just didn't know to what degree. And I'm also young. I was like, I got to get some skin in the game. You know, I'd had a lot of pain in my life, but I wanted to create something of my life so that I knew I could teach somebody. And so I got my nervous system regulation certification. I went through the Tony Robbins breakthrough intervention program. So I'm able to give people breakthroughs. Yeah, I loved it. Did a lot of studying with polyvagal theory and understanding the science of the mind and how we operate and why we really are the way that we are. That was kind of like a question I always had in my life. And then I kind of just started my coaching business. I just was like, you know what? I'm going to just see what happens. I was able to really it just skyrocketed very quickly. And I kind of pulled out the carpet from under me and was like, all right, I'm leaving corporate. I'm going all in. And there was definitely highs and lows. I don't know if I would fully recommend that to people, but it was something I ended up doing. I did that and I loved the coaching and I still coach, and the Sisterhood is going to relaunch later on, probably the end of Q4. But what I found was that I'd taken so much of my time learning how to coach, how to help people, how to guide people, but I loved working with entrepreneurs. And I was an entrepreneur at that point. So I wanted to collide both of my expertise, as much as an expertise as I have at this point, into something that I could really help other people with. And that's why me and one of my business partners created the Creators Collective, because we wanted it to be a space of basically, like, we don't know everything, obviously. We're not scaling 8-9 figure businesses, but what we do know is how to get it off the ground and what kind of mindset you need to have in order to take it to the next level, to even the first level. And so that was really kind of our Hearts of Heart passion project. And that is launching on August 14th. So we're super excited about that.
I can't wait to dive into that. If you don't mind, there's so many things I was like writing down. I want to ask this, YZ. So one thing that we briefly mentioned is that you just got an internship at Ed Milet. Do you mind sharing a little bit more of the backstory and more like the mindset? Because that's what I really want to talk about, is like, not just like, oh, I did this and that was like what happened, but I'm sure it's hard, right? Like when we go for something crazy, I know in my head, like, that's a little bit crazy, I'm still going to do it. What was your mental process? And like, what did it take to actually actualize something?
You know what? I was going through, so I actually was living in Arizona at the time. It was my last semester of college, and I had to leave Arizona halfway through because I was going through a really abusive relationship. And I remember like basically packing up all my boxes in my apartment, knowing I had to leave the next day. Like I decided in like 3 days, basically, my safety's not okay, I have to leave. And I remember sitting in my apartment floor and being like, I'm going to DM Ed. Like, I'm just going to DM him. And I still have the video. And in the video, I say, I've never talked to him in my life. I say, I want you to remember me because this is not the last time you see me. And then I basically go to Dallas. I did 75 hard. I kind of adapted this mindset that was really like, I think it's good for the season of life that I was in, but my mindset was, there is no other option. Like, I know that I have to fight for my life right now. I need to rebuild. I need to heal. I need to grieve. I need to move on. I need to trust that part of my life I can't go back to anymore. And so that was why it was so important to get into the right rooms, because I knew it was almost like a protective mechanism of, if I can put myself in the right spaces and I can learn enough, then I can make sure that this doesn't happen to me. And maybe I can help make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else.
Yeah.
And so when my mom actually was on Andy Frisella's show because she had won some, it was like crazy. And then Andy Frisella met had Vaughn, the pastor of disaster, who used to be like his co-host, and I think is going to continue to be his co-host. But we all connected, and then Vaughn knew somebody, and then I reached out to them who knew somebody, and it was like this constant, like, it was probably like a telephone of 12 people.
Wow.
Until I finally got to Ed Milet's CEO of his media team at that point, or media company at that point.
Yeah.
And I reached out to her a million times. I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to work here. I'll do anything. You don't have to even pay me anything. And they offered me an internship, and then things fell through the cracks. I was living in Dallas. They're obviously in California. And I just remember I was heartbroken when I found out they didn't have an internship for me. And I was sitting at the table with my brother Clint, and he was like, you know what, Nicole? Like, you just need to keep reaching out. Like, I have a feeling you shouldn't give up on this. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. Again, there's no other option. I have nothing to lose. Let's just go for it. Yeah. There's something really powerful about having your back pressed up against a wall, because you're able to make decisions that maybe you wouldn't have if you were in a space of like complete comfort. And so I kept reaching out, and then eventually she called me back and she was like, listen, we have an interview. It's going to be for the lowest level position. There's going to be a bunch of other people interviewed for it. You have it tomorrow. Do you want it? And I was like, absolutely. And I basically paced up and down my kitchen with notes and like studying and figuring out like, what am I going to say? How am I going to articulate myself? How am I going to basically sell myself to get this position? And it was just a breeze. Everybody on the team was amazing, and I ended up getting it. And it took a few months. Like, obviously Ed is very high level. He's a high caliber guy. So he's not going to be talking to the lowest level person on his team. But eventually he saw what I was doing and how fast I was moving, and he really appreciated that. And so he was able to like be the great leader that he was and reach out and celebrate me. And that's kind of how we started to bond. And yeah.
Thank you for showing up so authentically and sharing parts of life that are very personal, right? And not kind of glossing over that. So thank you.
Yeah.
And one thing that I find really interesting is like in this journey, I'm just starting my entrepreneurial journey. I am so amazed by people who are willing to help, right, at very different levels. And what it keeps reaffirming in my life is that people are just people, right? Yeah. And we have this conception, like if somebody has this level or title, makes us sound certain kind of money or followers, like they're different than us. And sure, I get people are busier, but a lot of people, like, they're just people. And if you have that persistence, you're like, I really want to help, and you're genuine, you're respectful. A lot of times things like really amazing stuff can happen when you get down to like, they're just people. I can still reach out to them. I can still offer them. Was there anything like that you learned or something similar that kind of like from that experience that shaped your understanding, like how to get in the room or get in front of these big people as part of you going through this experience and connecting with Ed Mylett as well?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if this answers your question, but where I'm going with it is I really feel like getting close and being able to see all of the people. And even my boyfriend now, he's in a business with a lot of very high level people. And so you get closer to them and you see them in real life and you understand, wow, they really are just normal people who have made the decision every single day to show up as their best self and do the best that they can. And I think Ed would say, like, day in and day out, that it really is not like every single person is special. Every single person has a purpose. And so finding that purpose and trusting in it and just showing up to do the work is like the most important thing. And I think a lot of people, what happens is we just don't have that faith and belief in ourselves. We don't have like, and that's also the beauty too, is right. Like imposter syndrome only shows up when you know that you care enough about what you're doing to look at what you're doing. It's the people that are the frauds that don't care about what they're doing, don't care about if it's the right thing, don't care about if they're really helping people, that actually can sometimes make it a little bit farther early on because they're not paying attention to all of the background noise. And eventually everybody always gets found out. But yeah, I would say that I've found that, and I have my own struggles. I think we all do, but I've found that wow, it really is a place, like the whatever dream and calling you do have on your heart, it's because you have been called to it and you are qualified for it. And maybe you won't get it even this year or next year, but if you stay the course in 5 to 10 years, the truth is if you put in the work, you'll get there.
Yeah. And Ed Mylett, one thing I remember from his podcast is talking about being that person who changes the trajectory in the family, right? For somebody who decides like, I'm going to do something different. And that resonated with me because a lot of times, like maybe we want to motivate other people, or we want to change people or whatnot, right? Or we want our children to do something good in their life. And really all we can do is be that change. Right. And I love that your parents had this entrepreneurial spirit. I was talking to somebody the other day, like I didn't have that, and not good or bad, but I was like, well, then my path is to go to school, get a job, all that stuff. And I was like, I don't know I don't know if I can be an entrepreneur. I don't know anybody doing that. But then when you start venturing out, you find more people like that. You kind of normalize this idea. And to like really value this conversation, we can share like it's okay to struggle and be imperfect and still take time and get there. And that's not a sign that you're failing. It's just a sign that that's the process.
Oh my gosh. I think that was really one of the biggest takeaways too, is hearing Ed be like, even the best of the best, they struggle. Like struggling is kind of mandatory. Have you ever heard of the gift of the 1/3?
No, but elaborate.
Okay, so there's these Olympic coaches and they train their athletes and they basically teach them, okay, when you're going after your dream, like the most important thing in your life, you have to recognize that everything is going to be 1/3 of something. And so you have 3 of the thirds. And the first 1/3 is sometimes things are going to be really amazing, high highs, everything's going to be perfect. You're going to love it. Then the other 1/3 is things are going to be kind of mediocre. You're going to get bored. You're going to lose patience. It's just going to be like, whatever. It's just like, okay, I just got to do the work. And then the other 1/3 is going to be really painful. It's going to be like, I am struggling. I am doing really hard work and I am doubting myself. And so anytime those 1/3 get out of a different mix and you start doing way too high highs or way too low lows, you need to kind of look at it and pivot and be like, okay, am I doing the hard work? Am I doing too much work? Am I burning myself out? And really sitting with that. And then we can trust like, okay, I'm struggling right now. And it's part of the process. It's almost a prerequisite. You're not really going to become an entrepreneur without not wanting to pull your hair out a few times.
Absolutely. That's why I have it always in the back, mom hair.
Yeah.
Always prepared for case.
Bun. Yeah.
No, I love what you said. And to your point, like then we can be role models and be genuine, inspire others who want to go on this journey. Like, hey, it's okay. Like wherever you're at, you'll find it. And one thing that I learned, like I was like, I want to do something more while I was working at Meta, but I wasn't sure how to start. And what honestly gave me a lot of comfort is I'm on a board of directors and also on a marketing committee for another nonprofit. And talking to both of those founding members, they were saying like, hey, I didn't have it figured out. It's kind of like I had a issue or a cause that I wanted to help with. And I just kind of started working towards it. And I was like, oh, you mean like I don't need to be like having the cure for cancer to start being an entrepreneur? Yes. Like, okay, that sounds more manageable.
Absolutely. Yeah, so much more manageable. I think we all have a gift. And it's like when we can kind of drop our ego and say, okay, do I want to use my gift to help people, or am I going to manipulate it to help millions of people? Or like, I think it's about trusting in your gift and then surrendering up the outcome. Because when you're when you're in alignment to what you're doing and you're getting energy from it, anything can happen. Like, and you'll always have enough. You'll always be abundant. So I think trusting that is really important.
Absolutely. And what I found, it also helps me like not stress out about the future as much. Like when you give up some of that future what ifs, like, okay, I'm just going to focus on the moment. Like, what can I do right now and find that? And you mentioned also about like when you started your own work, it was a little bit crazy. But could you share that? Like, I'm so curious about those moments. Like, how did you make that jump? Like, what were some of the most challenging things, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah.
And like, what would you share, like, in terms of tips for others? Like, I may be thinking about it, or I'm there. What can we learn?
For sure. Well, a couple of things I would have done differently is I probably would have stayed in corporate a little bit longer, and then all of the salary that I was making, paying what I needed to pay to live, but then investing all of it into coaches, a marketing team, just more help, like hiring freelancers, hiring an assistant. I think that in the moment, like I was doing that whole like, oh, I'm just going to burn all the boats. And I think that, it depends on your mindset. Like you can totally burn the boats and make something great of it. But sometimes burning the boats leaves you to burn on the island. And we have to be a little bit more concrete about what we're doing. I would say too, a lot with my mindset is, especially when you're trying to achieve and do big things, like now I'm in this position where I'm making 6 figures. I'm in a great environment. I have stability. I'm good. I'm great. I've never really had strong stability because, like I said, my parents were those entrepreneurs that were also riding the highs and lows. And so I really had to get right with my mind of like, I'm going to leave this. And I'm also not a quitter. But sometimes we have to quit the things that aren't fulfilling us and making sense to us anymore in order to find out what is really for us. So, yeah. Oh, I had something that I wanted to say, but it'll come back to me.
Yes, I have those moments too. Like, and you mentioned the thing about having your back against the wall. And I also had the same regret. Like, I wish I started earlier while I was at Meta. But then part of me, like, and this is just like me brainstorming, I really don't know if I could have done it differently. And one of my friends, Earl Tab, is like the timing is always perfect. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I didn't have to get my butt kicked out of Meta through layoffs, like I probably wouldn't have the urgency to be like, okay, get my shit together, figure this out. Or like, what is your purpose? Like now that you have a fresh start, what is the opportunity there? And so like, I kind of like, yes, I wish I could have done it sooner. And if you're like listening to this and you like, yes, I can do something sooner, amazing, do it. Like you will be so grateful for that. But if not, and you get yourself in a place where you're against the wall, I think incredible stuff happens on both ends.
Yeah, because there's literally no other option. That's the power of it. And I don't like to glorify that because I don't think we have to go there. But I also think that most of the time people move when their back is pressed up against a wall.
Yeah. Or you get really clear about like, what is it I want to do?
Yeah. And what you're going to focus on. Yes.
Yes. And then you have like this full force and you're sharing of the world and incredible stuff can really happen as you start doing that. So that's my own little finding on that. But
I love it.
I love this conversation. I was like, this is going to be so fun. One thing that you mentioned is like finding your purpose. And I think that's a sexy thing to say, like, find your purpose and then everything is going to fall together. I was like, well, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know, I like talking to people. I like reading. What is my purpose there? Like, honestly, I was like, I don't have a purpose. Like, I have no clue how to, like, I'm not creating AI tools. I'm not curing cancer. Like for me, the purpose was like big, monumental kind of purpose. But like, what was your process in finding something that was like, here, I think this is my purpose and I'm going to move towards that? Was there some kind of process or timeline where you followed that journey?
Yeah, I think part of it was I knew like the umbrella was that I wanted to help people. Like I knew that when I sat across somebody and they had like, for example, when my coach would have me have a breakthrough in a session when I'm 18 years old, I was shook. I remember walking out like and feeling so free and liberated and like clear and had with just so much. I knew where I was going in those moments. So when I was able to do that for people and I learned how to do it and understood the techniques and then I saw their eyes light up and the light bulb happen, I'm like, I don't care what I have to do. This is where I want to go. This is the direction I want to head in. Anything that I think, like there's the 6 Human Needs by Tony Robbins, but the last 2 are growth and contribution. And I think if we can like focus on growth and contribution in any form or any way, that is really probably our purpose. Because I also think like my purpose today is going to be different when I'm, in 10 years from now. Like maybe my purpose in 10 years from now is I am going to be a mom, or I'm going to be an aunt, or I'm going to, we never know. And I think letting go of the grip of needing to know our purpose, like like right now, my purpose is to be on this podcast. Like, and I think when we can simplify it, it gives us a little bit more space to show up as we really are versus like this curated image of who we need to be when we're 10 years from now or whatever it may be.
I completely hear you. I think people say like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we ask our kids that a lot. And I'm coming, and that it's not meant to be mean, right? It's just like a fun little question. But I think to your point, like, we're always learning and adjusting. And the way the world is, like, you don't have just like one place in your life. Like, I'm done learning. I'm going to be in this job forever. That's who I am. And we need to embrace that. And even if our kids, like, don't ask them like what they want to be when they grow up, like ask them like, what are the different passions? Like, get them thinking about this being an evolving like pattern and journey of life where you're not just going to be confined to like one end destination.
Yeah. And I think remembering too, like, to go after your purpose means you have to try a ton of different things, which means your purpose might feel a lot more like you're failing more than you're succeeding. But if we can get a little bit more comfortable with failing, which I myself struggle with, but like if we can get comfortable with failing, we can get closer to where we are supposed to go anyway.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask you a question about failing here in a moment because I like,
yeah.
But actually, I'm going to go ask that question because I have, oh, no, I'm going to go, here we go. What I wanted to say is like, you know, what's funny? People is like, you want to help people. And I was like, I want to have a cause that helps people, but I'm not sure what that is. Like, I don't necessarily feel like, oh, if I'm like just naturally helping people, that makes me feel great. Like, that's exactly what I want to do. So if it helps anybody listening, what I want to challenge is like, maybe the helping people in itself doesn't have to do something that aligns with you immediately, but maybe it's like, what do I really enjoy as part of that? So for example, like what I really enjoy, like I enjoy having these conversations. I enjoy learning from people and sharing those learnings with others. Or like I enjoy, again, sharing stories of others. Like, so in this whole essence, I'm helping others by sharing stories, but to me, it doesn't feel like this, like all like, it's all about kumbaya and helping people. Like when they get really specific about what you enjoy, that is helping people, that might help you align to this whole purpose. So sometimes to me, it felt like too big. Like maybe I'm not this altruistic person who just wants to help people.
For sure.
It sounds so intimidating. But like when they got really specific, I like connecting people. I like learning. I like sharing learnings. And I was like, oh yeah, that is helping people.
Yes. No. And I think that that's so true. Like, especially in today's world, like you do not have to have your purpose be in like direct service to others. And that sounds kind of wrong, but it's like, that's not like, we don't know what your purpose is. Maybe it's something else. And I also think like at the end of the day though, it all will trickle down into some sort of contribution, because even your podcast now will help other people. But the intention was never like, oh, I'm going to do this podcast and help a bunch of people. It was more like, I'm going to do this podcast because I love it and I'm going to learn and I want to help other people learn. Well, I guess you did, but yeah.
But that's the point. It doesn't sound right about like this whole attitude to help people, but I think it's helpful, because when we stop looking at things like from this how it's supposed to be and perfect and just get like, let's get real about what that could mean for you and where it could actually make sense, and then you can actually take action at it, then it becomes useful.
Yeah, even comedians, like they don't go like, oh, I'm gonna go on stage and help somebody, but that's what they're doing by making them laugh.
Yeah. Or being able to talk about things in a way that kind of crosses barriers and kind of social norms and whatnot, and gets us thinking. So I love that.
I love it.
Okay, fun topic for me, failure. Let's just go there. So one thing I personally really strongly believe is that our attitude towards failure really dictates how successful we can be and like how we can persevere through things. So could you share like your own perspective? Like, how do you approach failure right now? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just always fascinated people who are successful, what their attitude toward that is.
Yeah. I see failure as, I read this quote like a long time ago, and it was, if you knew that it was going to take you 50 rejections to make like $1 million, every time you got rejected, you'd be like, wow, great. Okay. Next one. And so I think if we can understand that, like, because we don't like failure because we feel rejected by that thing, like that, whether it's that business or the people that didn't buy from the business or whatever it may be. And if we can understand that everything is a learning experience, and the only way I think I ever got comfortable with failure, and still I struggle, I'm not going to pretend like that's not a real thing, but the only way to get comfortable with failure is to fail. It's to put yourself in positions where you're like, wow, I'm probably not going to be able to do this at all, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to try. And that could be as like big as, I'm going to start this business, or I'm going to launch this thing. I'm going to do it, and just like whatever. Or it's like, oh, I've literally never played volleyball in my life. I'm going to go play with random people at a court and watch myself fail through it so that we can build that muscle. Like even in school growing up, you're getting graded on A, B, C, and D, and sometimes we're learning differently or whatever it may be. And so when we're not coached properly or we're not taught properly and we get a big F when we never even took the time to understand the information in the first place, sometimes we feel like we're just inherently failures. And so looking at the root too has really helped me of like, where did I get this belief system that I wasn't smart? Where did I get this belief system that failure was not allowed, that I wasn't allowed to make mistakes? Like, who told you weren't allowed to make mistakes? That's crazy. Like, and I remember the first time I ever even started doing podcasts on myself, and I would be like so nervous, and I'd be like, oh, I got to say this and do this and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, why was I trying to protect myself from stuttering or my lip quivering or like being human? Like just being human. We bypass the fact because I think social media curates a certain image about everybody else. And it's like, no, we probably make mistakes every single day. And I think looking at them objectively and with a little bit less emotion and kind of getting like my mentor, one of my other mentors, she always says to me, she's like, Nicole, you just got to get gangster with your thoughts. And I'm like, you know what? You are so right. Like, sometimes you get all these belief systems like, oh, I failed. I got rejected. I'm not good enough. Oh, look, now I have all this evidence that the first time I ever launched a course ever, it didn't work. Like, what did you expect? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I think it's really important to kind of bring out that like that gangster self of you of like, okay, I'm going to fight back. Like I'm going to go to war with whatever it is that I'm feeling. I'm going to continue to show up because that's the arena that I'm trying to win in.
And what I noticed in some of your posts on Instagram is like you have this point of view. Like in this X amount of years, imagine what you could have accomplished by getting here. And I love that because when you start something, we're always like, oh, it's like, I'm going to climb a mountain. Here we go. But what about the perspective, like, what can I accomplish at the end of it? And also like, what's that small step? Like to me also what I think to me, honestly, the biggest part of failure is just regret of not doing something. And sometimes I motivate myself being like, how much would I regret not doing it? And I don't mean like crazy stuff that like, dangerous for my life, but most things I say, like, I try anything twice.
Yeah. Well, that's so true because it's like, yeah, you may fail now, but what really is failure? I think failure, like true failure, would be getting to the end of your life and being like, whoa, I could have been so much more than I was. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easy to not sit in that discomfort now because it's not here. Like we're very instant gratification people. We'd rather sit in the comfort of now versus the discomfort of now. And so like the reality is I totally resonate with you can't miss what's for you and everything that's yours, it's there for you. But I think the really hard, scary truth is that people every day turn 80 years old and they didn't do what they wanted to do. They didn't, and not even like build an empire or save 100 orphans. Like sometimes it's like, I didn't even enjoy it. I didn't even understand that I had a purpose. I didn't even show up every day in the way that I wanted to. And I think that that's something like a hard truth that we need to kind of sit with of we're just here on a floating rock, like going through the universe. Yeah. And if we can just leap a little bit more, and I'm saying this to myself too, like if we can just leap without the fear or with the fear, like regardless of the fear, I think we'd be surprised of what our life could actually turn into.
Yeah. What resonated with me, you said a little bit earlier about our education system and how it, it creates a certain kind of process for how we should be thinking and how we're graded. And then it says like, well, I'm not good at this. Why should I even bother? And what resonated with our discussion when we first met was like, I really want these conversations and all listeners to be like, what actually makes me happy? And not just have like, oh, instantly I'm like, I'm happy. But I mean, what is your success journey? Like forget success goal of like money, whatever that end part is. It's a process. And I'm not always perfect about it, but I have to keep in mind, like, how do I want to live towards the life that aligns to my values? And sometimes I'm failing at that, right? Sometimes I'm working too hard. Like, that's not how I want to live. But that whole mindset reminds me, it's unique. That means like what I'm doing and my values are not going to be yours. And if you're just trying to imitate somebody because they have money, success, they have a certain waist type, whatever, I promise you, if you just even got there exactly where they are and had those goals, that would not make you happy, unfortunately. Right? Like we all have our own journey and goals. So like that's my success. And that's the whole journey about this podcast. Like we are very different and we have to honor that. We have to honor our unique purpose, our unique journey, and spend time reflecting and finding that.
Yeah. That's so powerful. I love that.
I appreciate that. That's what came to mind when you were mentioning that, just honoring your whole journey. And let's talk about you. I was like, there's so many things I could ask you, but now you're doing this amazing work of the Creative Collective. Can you talk about how did that start, and what are you most excited about getting out of this work?
Yeah. So my business partner, Astrid, she was actually one of my very first group coaching clients. And we connected on social media. We had similar backgrounds. And so when we got on a Zoom call to basically just like figure out, okay, is this a good fit? Is it not? We just hit it off. And I was really able to, and this is kind of a rarity when a coach and client become friends, become business partners, but it just worked out for us. And I was able to guide her, but really it was her doing just amazing work. And she was working in corporate. She left her corporate job, scaled her business. Now she's a photographer. She's an amazing photographer, has a huge business, is basically booked out through 2024, has 4 photographers under her. She just crushes it. And she's a systems girl, strategy, has a very large background in marketing as well. And so just watching her do that. And then we just got closer and closer, and we were just sitting. We weren't at a campfire, but it feels like that's how I'm imagining it. We were probably on a Zoom call.
I love it. Hot cocos.
Yeah, right. It actually just happened so fluidly. I'd like to say it was some big break. Like we were like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's build this. But it was like a moment. And then all of a sudden we were like, okay, we're doing this. And we actually got on Canva and we were like joking around on making a logo. And we made the logo right there. And we were like, this is, and I had actually meditated prior where I was like, what do I want this to be called? And something about the Creators Collective just really like touched me. And I know, and Astrid loved it. So we moved on with that. But, we knew that we wanted to build basically her full framework of marketing, consulting, photography, how she grew and scaled her business. And then a little bit of my framework, but adding in the neuroscience, like how are our brains working, the psychology, the nervous system, how do you regulate yourself so that you can show up? How do you look at your inner wounds and your trauma and clear it so you can actually become the person that you're meant to be? And we just wanted to collide it and build out an 8-week program where people could do step-by-step kind of like get everything condensed into a period of time where it took us years to figure everything out.
Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing. I looked at it. The site looks beautiful. And I think as everybody can tell, like in the audience listening to, like, you are so genuine and authentic. And I know you also had your own challenges throughout the journey as an entrepreneur, and just like, like everybody has struggles. And so I love the healing aspect, because to the point of this whole conversation, like people like sometimes like, oh, why should we really focus on all this mental health and our inner stuff and inner work? But really your attitude towards yourself and those things that are limiting yourself are in our head a lot of times. It's not your actual skills. It's really the inner work that's limiting or enabling us. And so that's why I love the program that you're offering, because that's the root of it. And you have this practical expertise in this marketing and other valuable areas that are going to help somebody.
Yeah. And I would even say, like, I like to call entrepreneurship as a mirror into your wounds. And by mirror, it's really like a magnifying glass, because when you step into the arena of trying to be an entrepreneur and putting everything on your shoulders and the pressure is on, all of a sudden, like, your doubt is going to be screaming at you. The belief systems that were planted in you when you were little, like even, and I know I mentioned this when we first talked, but I had a speech impediment when I was little. And so that really ingrained in me, like, oh, I'm not smart. And so maybe I was smart at other things, but then when I got to entrepreneurship and organization and details, and like people had been in my ear telling me that I wasn't those things, I had to fight really hard to break down those beliefs and say, wait, I am those things, and reinvent my identity. I think and this is one of the things that Ed talks about and really, really coached me through, is you're only going to get out of life what your standards are and what you believe you're worth. And so all of that comes from what your identity is, your personality, how are you showing up, and all of those things are formed in your behaviors. But you can't change your behaviors without thinking differently about who you are and bringing truth and light to the beliefs and false systems that you've carried along with you. So your identity is everything. It's why like even if you're signing up for business programs or you're doing this, it's like you can only get so far and you can execute, but at some point we're going to bottleneck. And I've been there where you lose momentum. And then all of a sudden the loss of momentum is now not like, oh, I'm failing. That's a part of the process. I'm going to move forward. The loss of momentum is I am a failure. That is my identity now because I didn't have a foundation of truth when I started. So I truly think it's almost everything.
Oh my gosh. I was like, whew. Ed Mylett, thank you for joining this podcast just by proxy.
Yeah, right? He's in my brain.
Special guest.
Yeah, special guest. Ed Mylett, but not really Ed Mylett, just the voice.
The voice of wisdom. And that's another question that I had, if you don't mind us touching on it a little bit, just out of order. But the role of mentorship, like to me, it's a fascinating subject. And a lot of people like they want to have mentors, but they're not sure how to even approach that subject or what value there is to it. Like, do you have any advice for what is the value? It could just be your personal experience, obviously, right? What is the value in seeking out a mentor? And how do you bridge that? Like, how do you form that relationship? Because one thing is it's like, hey, I like you, you're smart. Can I be a mentee to you? And another thing is to actually make that a fruitful relationship. And both parties have to show up and you have to nurture that from my experience. So any advice for people who are looking for that? And then if maybe they're starting, how do you get the most out of it?
Yeah, I would say it's a couple things. I mean, one, like it's still shocking to me that me and Ed were ever even able to connect based off of the way that it worked out. But it was just kind of like a miracle. But I think mentorship is so important. One, I started getting mentored by reading. Like I read everything I could get my hands on. I let those authors be my mentors. I looked for books and podcasts and speakers and everything that I could get my hands on that I felt like there were people ahead of me that could teach me on where to go. And that's actually even why I started listening to Ed and why something dawned on me, like I need to be in that room. I think too, like you'll have different mentors for different seasons of your life, and trusting that and putting yourself in rooms with like that are networking events. Or in a church or whatever it is that you believe, but like putting yourself in position to open your heart to be like, hey, I need help. Like I think so many people are afraid of asking for help. Even where I'm at my level, I still need help. I need a lot of help. I think everybody probably needs help, even the best of the best. And having the humility to say that is the thing that's going to get you ahead. Like trusting like, okay, I'm a student for life. That is the dynamic. I think even Ed has taught me, like being a student for life, always learning. I would say too, if you don't have anybody in your environment, like there are other creators or other business people around that can guide and develop you. And sometimes that is as simple as like, hey, I would love to be mentored by you. Or it's like, hey, the thing with me and Ed is I did not get mentorship from Ed until I worked for him for a while and I provided something. I was providing a lot in his media team. And I think that opened his eyes. And so if you want to work with like that caliber of people, you got to bring something to the table. Don't ever reach out to somebody and say, I'll buy you coffee or I'll buy you a lunch. Like, I just don't think that, I think that actually can work against you. And I would focus too on, I think trusting that the right mentors are going to come into your life, but you have to take action to look for them. Nobody's going to come up to you and be like, can I mentor you? And I would also say investing in, if you have the means, or even a little bit of the means, to invest in people that have gone before you, that are even a step ahead of you, because then they can be hands-on, they can guide you through the process. I wish I would have gone to mentorship much earlier. Thankfully I had a coach as well, but Yeah, very. I think it's probably people don't go very that. I think that's actually what they mean when they say if you want to go far, go together. I think it's when you want to go far, go with people that have gone before you and let them help pull you up.
I love that. I love that. You're just full of quotes. Nicole.
Yeah, just quote girl.
You know what's funny? Just a moment ago, you were mentioning some things that we had to overcome. And what's funny of me doing this podcast is I love my mom. Just going to preface it. But my mom's Russian. So she's like, she tells you how it is, right? So when I was a kid, she's like, Anya, and I think I got excited. I made a little song for her and I performed it to her. She's like, Anya, you have the voice that goes better with music. And I was like, and my mom, like, again, I love my mom. She's amazing. But she said that, and I was like, as a kid, you're like, oh God.
Yeah, that must be bad.
So, and I'm doing a podcast, and it's hard for me to listen to my own, and I talk fast and whatnot. But I'm doing it, and every time I listen to it, it gets a little bit easier. It reminds me of things I can do better. Whether it's like, oh, Anya, how about you figure out how to use a mic? Step one, good. How about you listen to yourself and try to slow down and see, like, if you get nervous, take a breather, all those things. Or Anya, you say the word right a lot. Like all the things, but like that's the thing is it's okay to have insecurities, but then you can overcome them is where I'm going with this. That it doesn't have to debilitate you. And even if you don't feel confident in something and you want to do something that aligns to that area, just go for it because you will get better. And there's actually a really amazing power to that. Like I'm really grateful for this experience to do something that in my head I was really insecure about and see a good reaction. And that's helping people despite it being an area I'm maybe not super confident in.
Yes, no, I think that's so true. And I actually used to hate, I don't want to say hate, but I did not like my voice at all. And now I don't really think about it.
You have a beautiful voice. I don't know.
Oh, thank you. But I had somebody once say to me, wow, I really love your voice. I'd never been told that a day in my life. I'd actually been told the opposite, like, oh, it's too manly or whatever. And I know people are wild.
Yeah.
And I was like young, but that's the thing about being young. And I remember all of a sudden I was like, wow, okay, like maybe that's my truth. And so like, what even is a good voice? Like, what do we even
Sexy
know about
roar.
that? You know? Yeah. Like
that's what people speak like. Roar.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I think it's all relative, but I love your voice, and I think it's clear, it's articulate, it's so great, and so yeah,
I appreciate it. But we all have our insecurities, but like not letting hold us back is powerful. And then one thing that I just keep thinking to myself when I think about Nicole, it's like how authentic you are, and I mentioned this a couple of times, but I can imagine it also being hard to stay authentic to who you are and your message while you are also having the social persona. Do you mind touching on that? Like the challenge is kind of what you learned and advice for others?
Yeah, that is such a great point. And, something that I battle with as of like the last couple months too, of I used to be so much more free when it came to creating content. But once my content had a strategy, all of a sudden my art was I was getting confused. And that is something I don't have all the answers for, but I think what I've really realized is we think that is like the imposter syndrome. We think that we have to be a certain way all the time on social media. And sometimes life is great and things are going awesome. And we can talk about that and share that on social media. But I have bad mental health days, and we have to, and it doesn't mean that I don't do the work, but it means like that's the reality of it. Mm-hmm. And I think what we forget is that even the psychology of influence and marketing is connecting, having an intimacy with your client, which means showing up as who you truly are. And so I think if anybody's struggling with that, something that I've recently kind of conquered through and walked through was to connect with my clients or even get them to like buy, like just transparently, like, oh, I want them to work with me. Mm-hmm. It is not going to come from me being perfect, because they came to my page because they knew I wasn't. And having only perfectly curated content since they get to me is not going to be beneficial. And they're going to see right through it, because we all know at the end of the day, we all have our stuff. And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but sharing authentically, like I think it's actually like a lot of people stray away from it, but it is the thing that relates our humanness. So
Absolutely. And I think we crave that in a society that's always showing the perfection. It's nice to see another human being. It was like, oh, I'm a human being. Let me
yeah,
talk about that. And I applaud you for doing that because you do have a platform, right, where other people are looking up to you. And it's a responsibility. I hope not to put any pressure on you, right?
yeah,
But the
yeah,
more
no,
you
for
see
sure.
that, like girls and everybody just like, oh, I can be also authentic. And as humans, I think we crave that and we feel that. We really
Hmm.
feel the difference when somebody's saying one thing but doing another thing, or when somebody is really aligned. And like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's
Yeah,
very
because
powerful.
yeah, whenever I see like people, like what hurts our mental health on social media, it is literally seeing people that we think are having perfect lives. So I think it's almost our duty, and we don't have to glorify our pain and say, "Oh my gosh," like share every single thing and be like, "Pray for me," like I'm not okay, like time and place.
Right.
But I think it's actually our duty to be like, hey, just a reminder, it's not perfect all the time.
Right.
And I still struggle and I still have my moments because it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous when, and even like I was in that documentary about anxiety and depression, it's dangerous that there are people that are so, we get so full of the way that we're supposed to look. We don't even realize that we're not only hurting ourselves, but we're hurting who we used to be, the age of who we used to be, 13-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 18-year-olds,
Yeah.
40-year-olds that are
Yeah.
sitting in their house like, wow, I didn't do anything and this 20-year-old is doing more than me.
Yeah.
Like it's really important. And I think, yeah, it's a tricky subject, but authenticity all of the way.
Yeah. I like to think about like there are billions of people in the world, and like when we compete, we're basically saying, well, I have to like nobody's gonna care unless I'm the best of the billions. But that's
Yeah.
not true. And I learned that through my whole like dorky learning history. Is that like you can learn the same subject and even the same topic from three different people, and they could be saying the same thing, but you're gonna resonate with each person differently. And so, like, if you're
Hmm.
competing, you're not honoring that difference and the fact that you will have you projecting your own style will authentically align with people who love that about you. And if you try to
Yeah.
emulate somebody else's style, you're always going to be second best,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So no point in competing. It always feels shitty. You're not going to ever win on being
Yeah.
the second best of somebody else, and people will get drawn to your authentic style. So, just my experience on that.
I love that. That is so true. And even good for me to remember.
Hmm. Yeah, you have a lot of wisdom, so I appreciate you just sharing some with me and got some back. One thing, if you don't mind, like very selfish, I'm going to touch on the subject, but
Let's do it.
you also help people scale up their social business, right? And obviously, you've had immense success again walking the walk yourself. Do you have any advice, like whatever you feel comfortable sharing? And everything
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not shared, work with Nicole. She's like a marketing expert. Like, how do people start their journey in the social media space? There's so much; it's overwhelming. Like, what
Yeah.
advice would you give people to like focus on XYZ to make some traction?
That's a great question. And I'll never gatekeep because I love to give value because I feel like if you do want to work with me, you'll work with me because I'll help you to implement it, you know? And so, but as far as starting, like, I don't have anything magical to say. I would say that you just need to start and you need to get the reps in. I think social media is kind of like an art to it. You know, you can always tell like who's fairly new, who's been on a little bit, who's been on a long scale. Like even Joe Rogan, when he's like his podcasts and stuff, he literally acts like he's brushing his teeth. Like he's so comfortable in that space. And so I think getting the reps in, trusting the process, and posting what you like posting what's important to you, especially if you're just trying to grow your influence. Like on TikTok, this is how I see it. Instagram is very pretty, curated, everything looks a certain way, all of that. Then Facebook is like a little bit of the older crowd, sometimes political vibes, but overall, it's not like perfectly curated. And then TikTok is like, you can do whatever you want. Like post it, dance, do whatever. And I think if you don't know what you want to post, starting with TikTok is so great because you could just be like, oh, I'm just going to post my day. I'm going to post this crazy thing. I'm going to what am I good at? What am I talented at? Oh, even for me, like I don't have like talents, but I love books. And so for a while there to get practice, I'd be like, oh, let me read this part of this book I like, or these are my top 5 books. Like I would just talk about what I liked. I would share stories. I think really getting curious without pressure about what you want to post is really important. And then later all of the strategy stuff comes depending on what your goals and objectives are. But I would also say people's number one thing is it's too saturated. Like there's too much going on. People are already doing what I'm doing. And I think that is a lie where like, what are you going to do then? Just consume? You're just going to be a consumer versus a creator. I'm constantly being like, create more than you consume. And again, I don't do that perfectly, especially because my job is like social media basically. But creating more than you consume and getting curious and using it as a tool, not as something to numb yourself with or dissociate with, using it as a tool. I would say, looking into, if you do want to start selling, looking into what is agitational content. Like, how can I write agitational content? How can I look at my ideal client and then what my ideal client's buyers types are? Building out a strategy of like 6 months, but knowing every 2 months, you're going to be pivoting and looking at all of your insights. There are so many insights on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook that you can kind of analyze and say, hey, is this doing well? Is my client liking this? Are they not liking this? Or my follower liking this or not liking this? And then I would also say we think marketing is so complex, and sure, we can make it complex. There's a lot of cool things that we can do. But if you follow somebody on Instagram that is doing very well, just go look at what they're doing. Like they're posting every day. There's certain things that they talk about. They have a brand. They have brand colors. They have a palette. They have a logo. Maybe they are talking about certain things. They have content pillars. They are posting this many times on their story. Like we make marketing more complex when people are marketing to us every single day. So all we have to do is just look at their marketing.
I love that. So people follow Nicole so you can learn from her and get more valuable tips and just see how you can combine authenticity and social media strategy and everything. And I'm learning a lot from you. I'm following you like, oh my gosh. Honestly, I had no experience of TikTok before this, which is embarrassing, but I'm old. Who knows? But I'm trying, and I'm learning and I'm getting over a curve. And so I'm like on all social media, it's new and I'm feeling so much, but I'm learning. I'm like, okay, that could be a little better. Like, and I'm learning from Nicole and other people who I follow. So it's just a process. And I'm like, well, the only way I'm going to keep better if I don't stop and keep learning. Like the only way I actually fail is like, I just stop. So,
yes. Yeah. Having the intention of like studying the social media versus consuming it, I think was a game changer for me.
Oh God. And my friend, time has flown by. This has been so fun.
Wow.
I know. I knew this would be super fun. Was there anything that we missed in all the questions that you want to share about your awesome journey, everything you're doing?
I feel like we covered a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah. And can we just read it? So the August launch, August 14th, there's a few spots left still in the Creators Collective, right? For people to check out.
You can apply today. You can go to the link on my bio or the creatorscollective.cc bio. But we have applications until the 11th.
Okay.
And then the course starts on the 14th.
Yeah. And your handle it's Nicole Faith?
Yes.
On Instagram.
It's Nicole Faith.
Makes sense. And I'll make sure to link all that in the description so people can find you and check you out and just like see what an awesome, genuine human being you are.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been awesome. You and your mom have just been such a blessing in my life. So very grateful for that. And to wrap up, we do 3 short bit questions whenever you're ready. And then I'll let you enjoy your day.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. First one is success to me is
freedom.
Okay. My current purpose is like a short bit question. So answer.
Love.
I love it. Oh, it's amazing. Okay. Last one. In the positive context, going off track is
figuring out who you are and where you're supposed to go next.
Oh. You're so on it, like pro podcaster right
Oh,
here.
thank you.
Well,
Well, you create a really good space to be able to speak, and so some people don't do that, but it's very authentic and warm, and it's amazing.
I have so much fun doing it, so it makes it easy. But
Good.
thank you also to all of our listeners. Thanks you for joining us. I'm really curious to see what your takeaways are. Please tag us on social media. Let us know what your questions are. I love to see all of your posts, all of your comments, all of your feedback, generally like looking at it and trying to improve. And each and every one of you, like I appreciate you joining Right Off Track and going on this fun adventure with us. And we look forward to having you next time. And thank you again, Nicole.
Thank you.